Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. After a little bit of logistical challenges, we're going to be able to start right on time at 6 o'clock. It's now 6 o'clock. Welcome to the Astor Theatre. And I would like to start off by respectfully acknowledging that the land on which we gather is in traditional Mi'kmaq territory. The debate today will help us to decide who our next mayor will be and who will help determine the future of Queens County and its residents. We have two candidates I'd like to introduce. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do. Terry Doucette and Scott Christian. I'm sure that they have made themselves known to you over the past few weeks, and they'll introduce themselves further in the debate. I would ask that everybody remain very respectful and not indicate any movement in any direction while the candidates are doing their thing. I would like to introduce our former premier, Daryl Dexter, yeah. You know, like there aren't enough Dexters around that I forget. Daryl will be our moderator, and he'll conduct the proceedings. He'll outline the rules, and I will act as your timekeeper during that process, where the candidates will have 3 minutes to respond to a question. I will raise the orange card when we reach the 1 minute mark. When that minute is done, I will raise the red card, and the moderator will stop the discussion at that point. So good luck, gentlemen, and good luck, moderator. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's nice to know that I'm just a historical artifact at this point.
I'm from away.
It's great to be with you this evening. It's great to be back in the Astor Theatre. I would ask that if you have cell phones, if you would turn them off so as not to distract the candidates when they are giving their answers. So here are the debate rules to begin with. Both candidates have received these rules and agreed to them. Each candidate will have 5 minutes to introduce themselves and to speak to issues of importance in their campaign. After both candidates have spoken, the second candidate to speak will receive the first question and have 3 minutes to address that question. The other candidate will then have 3 minutes to address the question, and after both candidates have responded, there will be 4 minutes of open time to add to the comments that were made, to rebut the comments of the other candidate, or to engage directly with the other candidate. This process will be repeated with the questions being alternated or rotated from candidate to candidate until shortly before 7 p.m., at which time the floor will be open to questions from the audience. If an audience member has a question, I would ask that you write it out in advance and send it up to me. Please write legibly and include your name. And I can say that I have someone already came prepared because I already have a question from the audience. The first candidate to do introductory remarks is Mr. Doucette. Mr. Doucette, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here before you and for the opportunity to speak to you. I arrived in Queens County in 1978. I graduated in May of that year. I received a job offer from Fran Mauser, the superintendent of schools in this county, and I asked my wife to marry me. She graduated in June from a registered nursing program at the Halifax Infirmary. We were married in October. We have 2 children, John and Tara. They're both educators. We have 2 granddaughters, Campbell and Summer. They're at the South Queens Middle School and Liverpool Regional High School. I had the pleasure of working first in Beach Meadows. What a wonderful community. They had me teaching grades 6, 7, and 8 36 children in the same classroom. Just a wonderful experience. Over the years, I had the chance to work in 8 different communities, including North Queens and Greenfield. After a principalship at South Queens Middle School, I became the Assistant Superintendent of Schools for Queens County. Shortly thereafter, I became the Superintendent of Schools. Then a great big amalgamation occurred, and they created Southwest Regional School Board. And that consisted of 53 different human beings trying to come up with solutions for different counties. That didn't work very well. Anyway, after that amalgamation, I became assistant director of schools. They gave me Shelburne County, they gave me Queens County, and they gave me 2 schools in Lunenburg County. Following that, they gave me a job as director of schools for Lunenburg and Queens. After a number of years at the senior level, I decided that I wasn't having any fun. I was spending 7 days a week meeting with boards and such, and Saturdays was the same thing. We would have meetings on Saturdays. So I said to my daughter Tara, when she was going into grade 10, it was 1997, "Your dad is thinking about being your principal next year." And she said, without hesitation, "Dad, you're the last face I want to see in that school." And I said, "Well, sweetheart, okay. I'll wait till the year 2000 when you graduate." So she walked out in June of 2000, and I walked in. And I spent my last 15 years there. And children will share names with you. They called me, for the first 5 years, the warden. The second 5 years, I was heavy D. But I lost weight, and I just became D for the last 5. And I had tears in my eyes when I left that school. It meant everything to me. And I used to say, as I walked the halls and go into the classroom, "I love this school." And they just look at me. They think I'm nuts. So it's been a wonderful thing. In addition to that, I have to speak quickly. I started a business in 2003 called Heritage Property Management that keeps me busy. I am the president of the Lake Stewart Lot Owners Association, which is a subdivision that's across the road from the parking lot at Carter's Beach. It's about 7 kilometers in. And I look after I'm the treasurer of that, and I send nasty letters to people who don't pay their fees and stuff like that. I'm a registered guide with the Nova Scotia Registered Guides Association for hunting and fishing. This past year, I was offered an opportunity from Acadia University, of all places. I wear a St. FX ring. They wanted me to be a university advisor, mentoring and monitoring pre-service teachers. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from South Shore Board wanting me to become the same for students from Mount St. Vincent, St. Francis Xavier, and Acadia again. And that's my fallback position if I don't get elected. I have to rush through my volunteer experience. I will do that right now. I spent a lot of years coaching and managing sports teams at Liverpool High School and the other schools that I came through. I'm a volunteer musician. I spent a lot of time on this stage, kitchen parties, with Bo Bootlier Band, friends of mine up in Milton. We used to sing, volunteering at the community, at the Queen's Manor. No charge, we were fundraising groups. I play guitar and I sing, or I try to. I have a saxophone and a trumpet at home, 2 harmonicas. I didn't say I play them all well, but I can make a noise. I'm a proud member and resident of this community. I want what's best for it.
Thank you, Mr. Doucette.
Thank you.
Mr. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Daryl. I want to start off with gratitude. Gratitude for the organizers of this event, the South Queens Chamber of Commerce and the Astor Theatre Society. Gratitude to you, Mr. Dexter, for agreeing to moderate, and John, and to Terry for coming out today. But most importantly, to all of you and to the folks who are following along on the live stream. Because I think it is critically important that we engage with each other, and that we congregate, and that we come together to discuss what's important and to be kept informed as residents. And there hasn't been enough of that in Queens County. Folks like you coming together and being informed and communicating with each other. And that's a commitment that I'd make to you. If I'm honored to be your next mayor, I'm making a commitment that this is the start of something, and that we continue to have ongoing engagement and open communication with each other. I've tried to demonstrate that throughout my campaign. I hosted 10 town halls all throughout Queens County. It was an incredible opportunity for me to, share who I am and what I'm about, and to learn from the various folks, across Queens County, because it's a kaleidoscope of different communities, and I've learned incredible things. There's so many opportunities. There's so many challenges being experienced, but there's amazing ideas and amazing energy throughout the communities and within the residents of Queens. So that really excites me, and I thank you all for engaging in that. So a little bit about who I am. I'm a small town Nova Scotia boy, came from Yarmouth originally, and then grew up in Windsor. Couldn't wait to get out of Windsor as soon as I graduated from high school. And I left and I pursued an education. I have a bachelor's in human rights and criminology. I have a master's degree in international law. And I worked as a consultant for and with government at all levels and large nonprofits. And my work is that I look at policies and programs and I determine if they're effective. Are they efficient? So I've seen the good, I've seen the bad, I've seen the ugly, and I'm really well positioned to understand what makes for healthy, effective organizations and communities. So it was about 7 years ago, my wife and I, we had our first child, and we thought, we were living in Edmonton at the time, we thought we better get back east so that we could be surrounded by the support of our extended families. And so my wife was working for Scotiabank at the time, and we had this amazing opportunity that we could get back east if Scotiabank would send us back east. And so they were looking at relocating some managers over here, and we had three choices. We could go to Sheet Harbour, we could go to Annapolis Royal, or we could go to Liverpool. Well, Sheet Harbour was off the list immediately. I don't know if anybody's been to Sheet Harbour, but Annapolis Royal and Queens were both really attractive ideas and potentials. We chose Liverpool, and boy, are we glad that we did. As part of that relocation process, we were sent to Liverpool, and I think I saw you earlier. Chris, we reached out and we found this realtor called Chris Snarby, right? And I think he had 17 viewings lined up for us, and we had 3 days to buy a house. And I think we didn't end up buying any of the 17 listings that you showed us, but we fell in love with the community. We thought, wow, how amazing is it that we chose this place to call home, to set down roots. The lakes, the rivers, the beaches, and the warm welcome that we got from the residents of Queens, we knew that we'd made the right decision. And honestly, it was love at first sight. Not to sound corny, but it was. And that love affair has persisted over the last 7 years that we've spent here. And we've dove in head first with this community. This is where we're going to raise our children. This is where my parents will grow old. We are incredibly invested and committed to this community. My wife is the president of the South Queens Chamber of Commerce and the Pirates Soccer Association. I spent over 6 years contributing my time in a leadership position with the Queens Daycare Association. And in that time and throughout our experiences, I've just seen the immense opportunity that exists within Queens, but also the immense challenges that we're experiencing. 1 in 3 children are living below the poverty line. A lot of seniors are on fixed incomes and having a really tough time with inflationary pressures and making ends meet. So what I believe we need to do is we need to grow in the right way, because growth is coming, growth is happening. So we need to grow in the right way, a way that honors our past, protects our environment, and creates those good paying jobs and an economic vitality for the future. And in order to do that, we need a winning plan, we need to work the plan, and we need to work together. If we do those things, and I believe I'm the right guy for the job to lead those things forward, our future here in Queens is incredibly bright. And I look forward to discussing my vision as it relates to that with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. In accordance with the rules, the first question will go to Mr. Christian first. Mr. Christian, what is the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity for Queens County today, and what would be your first priority?
Plan. We need a plan. The challenge is that we don't have one. We need a master plan. Within that, we need an economic development strategy. We need a community wellness strategy. We need a heritage strategy. We need a winning plan, and we need to work that plan. So the opportunity is that if we can identify those opportunities, those deliberate strategic opportunities to reinvest some of the accumulated monies, some of the sort of a really well-known sort of best kept secret with the region of Queens, and there's great opportunity in this, is that we have substantial reserves. And so we need to look for opportunities to reinvest some of those monies, but again, with a smart, deliberate strategy in place. So I'd be one of 8 votes, clearly, if I have the honor of being your next mayor, but my intention would be to work alongside my fellow councillors and the CAO to develop a strategy where we can identify those opportunities to make the smart investments in our community that serve us well now, that improve the quality of lives of everybody who's assembled here today, and the entirety of Queens County, but also position us well for the future. We need good paying jobs. We need to attract investors and employers here. We need educators, we need healthcare professionals, we need to do it together. And with that plan, we ought to ensure that we work effectively with the other orders of government, the feds, the province, and the large nonprofits who are all working toward mandates that we ought to achieve together. We haven't done that well enough. We have left too much money on the table from the other orders of government, and we have left too many opportunities go by the wayside because of a lack of a collaborative spirit and a detailed, strategic understanding of how we're going to get where we want to go. I look at the amount of vacancies and the challenge that the organization as the region of Queens has in attracting and retaining staff, and I think that that's also related to the lack of a strategy, lack of a plan. I had a business mentor tell me, he runs an organization of 170 employees, and he said, the only time we had a trouble with corporate culture is when my team didn't have enough work to do, when we didn't know what we were working toward. Our staff, our mayor and council, our CAO, we have to have a common vision, a collective voice, and some collaborative leadership to guide us where we all need to go so that we can all prosper together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. Mr. Doucette, the floor is yours. The question again? Yes, the question is, what is the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity for Queens County today, and what would be your first priority?
I'd like to start my response by noting that there will be a new mayor after October the 19th. There will be at least 4 new representatives from the various districts. With that in mind, it's very important for the new mayor, and I hope it's myself, to sit down and establish a sense of team and team play. And with that, to come up with the quality team so that we can address the issues in a respectful, professional manner, so that we can develop a sense of where the residents are, what their opinions are, and to come up with some fair and reasonable decisions. Once that's addressed, and we talk about professionalism, respect, effective listening, conflict resolution, mediation, and things like that, we will move forward. The biggest situation, and I've read Scott's outlines and platforms, and they're very similar to mine with respect to the needs that we have in Queens County. He referred to the 1/3 of the children. The poverty rate for children entering our school system is 28.5%, the highest in Nova Scotia. Our food banks are suffering. The Liverpool Food Bank, or the South Queens Food Bank, has seen an increase of 26% in the past 2 years. The donations for the food bank are down 20%. Why is that? Perhaps people can't afford to make the donations they used to make. The municipal assessment for Queens County shows us that employment rates here are below the provincial average. The educational level here is below the provincial average. And wage earnings are below provincial average here. Our population is something we have to assess. We have 3,000 more senior citizens over the age of 60 than we do young people between the ages of 0 and 50. There are some significant issues out in the communities. I know what they are, Scott knows what they are, and I'm sure you know what they are. We need a solution, and the biggest opportunity is before us, and that is the possibility for a new mill. Now, I don't want a new mill, nor do you, if the environmental issues that are associated with the past mill that Paper Excellence was associated with are in place. Thank you.
Time. The floor is now open to either of you to, as I say, address further, rebut, add to your comments.
Do you have anything?
Thank you, sir. Yes. Where did I leave off, Darrell? The mill. Boat Emergency closed in 2012. This gentleman here did his best to keep it open. He offered $50 million for a 5-year period to that company, as long as they kept jobs open for 2,000 employees, 320 to 350 in the mill, the rest in the forestry business, truckers, cutters, you name it. And then, with effort, he and his government had Nova Scotia Power lower their rates for power for Bowater Mersey. In addition, and I see Courtney Wenzel here, he knows, the workers of Bowater decided to make concessions in their wages to keep that mill open. The mill closed. Since it closed, all of a sudden, there were changes at the high school. The engineers and the management team were leaving Queens County to go elsewhere, and there was a population decline from that point on. People were going out west, young men were looking for work, and the end result was eventually they would come home. Sometimes their matrimonial relationship was ceased because of the distance. We don't want that. We need people here. Our population density shows us that we don't have enough young people. We need jobs to address the issues that exist in food banks and people sleeping in the street, in the woods. Drug paraphernalia in our community. We need that stopped. We need people back working. We need jobs. This is our opportunity. I've probably taken enough. Go ahead.
The one question I would have for you, I agree. We need jobs. We need good paying jobs. We need living wage jobs. Yes. I'm wondering, do you have better information than I do in terms of the number of jobs that would be created by the craft pulp mill being operated here? Because from the minimal amount of research that I've been able to engage in, from my estimation, it looks like with the amount of robotics and automation that exists within the current mill processes, that certainly during the construction phase, and certainly, other jobs, that could, be throughout the rest of Nova Scotia. But how are you so certain how many jobs would be created in the region of Queens associated with that mill?
Well, the jobs will be there because it's going to take $1.4 billion to construct that plant. It's new technology. It's new machinery. It's a new process. I've never seen an artificial intelligence machine trimming softwood to make pulp. We have combine harvesters. We have big harvesters for trees. And there's going to be pulp trucks running all over the province of Nova Scotia with the product to process it into pulp. It's going to be a busy place. It's going to be twice the size of the current mill, twice the size. So I would anticipate at least 300 jobs and probably another 1,500 to 2,000. Now, Scott, are you a stakeholder with the...
Okay, that's time on that.
I'll just say
question
no.
for now. It's time for the second question, and this goes to Mr. Doucette to begin with. And the question is this, it's on infrastructure. There is a proposed $21.4 million infrastructure plan currently before the Utility and Review Board. Do you support the proposed infrastructure plan in its current form, and what other infrastructure projects are a priority for you?
Just clarification, when you say 21.4 million, are you referring to the water? That's extension up?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Basically, what Mr. Dexter is asking is assessing the cost of the effort to produce a water and sewage path to the Mount Pleasant area. And the reason for that utility extension is the need for homes, apartments, and one has to know a little bit about the waterworks and the sewage to be able to answer the question correctly. The system that we have in town runs water from in front of the fire department up straight through, and those lines are extremely weak. If something happens to those lines, I guarantee you that the water will be off in Liverpool and Brooklyn, right down by the mill, for probably a month. So it has to be working carefully. I support the extension, but I would argue about the price. The projected cost, the last time I looked, was $20,000. That included the Waterloo Street work and included Weir Lane and the Mount Pleasant extension. I don't think it can be done for $20,000. In fact, I'd be surprised by the time it starts, it would be done for $30,000. So it's a very expensive challenge. Do I want to see it? If it creates affordable housing for people, absolutely. What was the second part of the question? I'm sorry.
What other infrastructure projects are a priority for you?
Number one for me would be affordable housing for our senior citizens. Does anybody, raise your hand if you know what Queen's Care Society is? Queen's Care Society is the organization that suggested public transportation free of charge for our seniors. And the result, thanks to people like Bill Smythe, who's here tonight, was the Queen's public transit system that we have in place today, a very successful operation. They are fighting now for a full-time coordinator for senior safety. This would be a person who would make sure that senior citizens could stay in their homes longer than what they're doing now. It's a support. The region of Queens has a plan in place for people with low incomes, and a very positive thing. And basically, if you're making...
That is time.
Thank you.
Mr. Christian? There is a proposed $21.4 million infrastructure plan before the UARB. Do you support the proposed infrastructure plan in its current form? And what other infrastructure projects are a priority to you?
Yeah, I think it's important that we extend water and sewer as it makes sense to do so. And given the amount of energy commitment investment on part of the two developers who are looking at expanding housing in the Mount Pleasant area, I would be supportive. I think that the feds need to be at the table. I'm not sure where the federal government money is as it relates to that. That would be a major concern for me in terms of why from my understanding, it would be the largest infrastructure investment ever for the region of Queens to shoulder the 10 or 11 million dollars that is their portion of the pie. So that price tag is concerning, and again, we need to access funding from all available sources. But I think it's important that we have a really good strategy in terms of where we see the opportunities for growth. We do need some new housing, for sure. We also need to repurpose and better use existing housing to develop. We need a comprehensive housing strategy, and part of it is building new homes. Certainly, non-market homes are a big part of that. With regards to the second question, second portion of the question, in terms of infrastructure projects that I think are really important, I would just point to two. And I probably don't have enough time to speak to them exactly the way that I would like to, but I would just say that an inspiring library space is really important. A public library space is a critically important piece of community infrastructure. And also I believe an indoor pool here in Liverpool is really important.
Okay, then we'll move on to the open time where either of you can add, rebut, add additional information.
I'm gonna go, Terry, because you went last time. I need to say, with regards to the indoor pool, I need to say a big thank you to all of the folks who have contributed an immense amount of time and energy to get to the place that we are now. Because my position is that we should have an indoor pool, but I don't want that in any way to take away from the incredible work of the pool committee, both volunteer and staff members, the incredible work that they've done on the pool committee. And I've heard lots of rumbling within the community and a lot of these folks catching flack because of the fact that they've secured a deal and began the operation of an outdoor pool. And we need more people at the table contributing their time and energy to committees, not less. And so we need to respect and honor and give them a pat on the back for the work that they've done. Thank you. That said, I think we need to course correct. I think the reluctance to build an indoor pool has been associated with the ongoing operating costs of an indoor pool. I think that there are really innovative solutions that we can explore, and we need to work effectively with other stakeholders in our community to have diversified user streams. We need a pool that is accessible to everybody from a cost perspective and a built design perspective, and we need to have access to it 12 months of the year.
Following what Scott has just said, my wife is here tonight, and I have to drive home with her, and she too, and I three.
It's a pretty short walk, to be fair.
How do you know where I live?
It's on the elector list.
Debbie and I are certainly, our first preference is an indoor pool. And I just want to say that recently, the price tag for the outdoor pool has increased from $7.2 million to $8.08 million. And it's because time's going by and the cost to produce it. So the people, it's a heated pool. It's 25 meters. It's a nice size. It's got 6 lanes. It's got washrooms that are attached to it. It's got I'm not sure I've never seen it, but there's supposed to be a sand beach area where you can walk into the pool, and change rooms and things like that. So people who see it as a compromise see it as a beginning, and they know that there are pools in other areas where they build domes over to create the inside effect of it. It's a heated pool. So thank you.
All right,
I'll cede the time. I'll cede the time.
we'll move on to the next
I
question.
was just saying, I'll cede the rest of the time, yeah?
Thank you. The next question is on economic development. There is a current feasibility study underway for a new mill in Queens County. If we assume the outcome of the study is positive, what is your view on tax treatment, zoning, environmental impacts, and Aboriginal consultation on this project? And this is Scott.
It's me first?
Yes.
So I thought this might come up. Yeah, certainly. And so I appreciate the fact that you framed this under the economic development lens, and certainly that is the attraction, is the idea that it would create jobs, a new mill, and that we desperately need more commercial revenue to feed into our tax base. The tax burden is, the vast majority of the taxes and the tax base that we have is on the shoulder of residents. And so to expand the tax base, we need to expand the commercial and corporate tax base. So that's an obvious for me. But the challenge I have with this process, and I'll just start by saying, in my opening remarks, I said that what I do is I'm a public sector consultant, and so I work to evaluate programs and policies. So what I do, organizations hire me to make good evidence-informed decisions. And right now, I don't have enough evidence, I don't have enough information to be a strong advocate for or opponent to a new mill. And I think it's dangerous, actually, for us to have a position to jump the gun, to count our chickens before they hatch. We don't want to be in a weak bargaining position as it relates to working alongside or trying to work with Paper Excellence. The reality is Paper Excellence is looking for a new home because they ruined the last one. The other reality is that the provincial government is on the hook for a massive lawsuit associated with the closure of that last mill. So there are a lot of agendas at the table, and the only agenda, from my perspective, that the region of Queens Municipality should have, or that the representative of the municipality should have, is to stay informed, to have a seat at the table, and to represent the best interests of the residents of Queens. So that could be jobs, but that could also be environmental hazards. I don't think it's going to create 300 jobs on a perpetual basis. I also don't think it's going to be the same mill that was built in Pictou County by Scott Paper in 1967. There's massive amounts of misinformation. What we ought to do is we ought to be at the table, maintain a seat at the table, hold the corporate organization, hold their feet to the flames, and make sure that we advocate for the best interests of the residents of Queens.
Mr. Doucette?
Could I hear the question again, sir?
Sure. There is a current feasibility study underway for a new mill in Queens County. If we assume the outcome of the study is positive, what is your view on tax treatment, zoning, environmental impacts, and Aboriginal consultation in respect to the project?
When I left home from Pictou County. I was 12 years old in 1967, and I asked my father what that smell was. He said, "Terry, that is the smell of money." Little did I know that it was the smell of corruption and wrongdoing and environmental neglect. Now let me tell you a little bit about that. In 1966, before that mill opened by Scott Maritime, the First Nations chief and council from Pictou Landing were taking to New Brunswick to see a water treatment center. When they came back, they sold their property for $65,000 to the provincial government. that was the start of Boat Harbor. Now, what they saw and what they thought they were getting in New Brunswick wasn't what they got. Boat Harbor was created. Within 1 year of that opening, white houses were turning like a muddy color. And so was the church that was on Pictou Landings Reserve. Shortly thereafter, I think it was 3 years in 1970, what did they do? They built a chemical plant, Canso Chemicals. Guess what was disappearing from that? Mercury, 5 tons. Where did that go? Boat Harbor or Pictou Harbor? The fishermen noticed 2 years after they opened, dead fish. Dead fish, Boat Harbor. People were protesting. It was a series of incorrect decision-making, bad management. People were protesting. Even the workers in the plant were protesting. By the late 80s, there was a medical study on respiratory and cancer, and the rates up there were high. That chemical plant was making chloroalkali, which is a bleach in making the pulp. They were losing some of that stuff out into the Pictou Harbor. It was just pollution, pollution, pollution. It's wrong for somebody to think that's Paper Excellence's fault. They inherited that long before they came in 2011 to Scott Paper. Paper Excellence, you want to do your homework on it, they lease 22 million hectares, which is 4 times the size of Nova Scotia. They have, since 2002, been in the top 50 corporate citizens. And that was determined by Corporate Knights. 17 out of 21 years, they were rated for their sustainability.
That's time. We'll now enter open time. So
Thank you.
You can continue or...
Just one point I'd like to touch on is with regards to the Aboriginal consultation. I had the great honor and privilege, it was the last town hall that my team did, to meet with a group of women. It wasn't explicitly for women, but they were the only people who showed up at Wildcat. In that conversation, they made me aware, actually, that they were fighting to have a seat. The Acadia First Nations hadn't been initially invited to the table of stakeholders engaged in the feasibility study, and that they actively had to advocate for and lobby to have a position at the table. And so in speaking to those folks, I have my concerns with regards to the value or importance that Paper Excellence is placing on Aboriginal consultations, I would say.
Anything else to add?
I'd like to add that the feasibility study is in the hands of Paper Excellence. We have an Environmental Act that is a very powerful organization. Premier Houston put the run to Paper Excellence up there, and they were sued $450 million. Don't be fooled, Paper Excellence is in charge here. They will make the decision whether it's financially viable to create a mill, and they're not going to do it if it's less than 14% profitability. They won't do it. And if you study it, there are implications for the province and for Paper Excellence, depending on what decision they take. Dealing with the First Nations people, it is essential, and it's outlined, and Paper Excellence knows that the province is demanding consultation with the First Nations. By the way, this is Indigenous Month for our First Nations people, and recently, in fact, on Sunday, it was Truth and Reconciliation Day being celebrated. Debbie and I were there for 3.5 hours participating. The next day was Treaty Day. And we were introduced this evening to this gathering by John over there about the ceded territory. Thank you.
Respectfully, Terry, after all of the information you shared with us, and your estimation, what this looks like, the history of the environmental hazards in Pictou County, and whatnot. So I don't understand your position to be such a sympathizer and advocate for paper excellence based on that information.
I'm not being an advocate. As I said at the first, I'm saying that there's a new environmental act out there, and one section of it is called environmental assessment. It's a complicated process. The feasibility study is addressed. An application is made by whomever is wanting to do the new mill, in this case it's Paper Excellence. They can take up to 84 days to process that. It's given to the government. The government can take up to 21 days to 80 days. The act is reviewed. Paper Excellence would have 2 years.
That is time. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Terry.
Thank you.
So our next question, although this will be an opportunity for you to follow up on that if you like, is this. What is your economic development vision for Queens County? And that question goes first to Mr. Doucette.
I think it's my go, isn't it?
Yeah, it's yours.
Yeah. Daryl, I think it's my go, yeah?
You had first go at the last question. Did I get that wrong? The audience seems to be murmuring that maybe I'm out of... So in which case, Scott...
No, that's right. No, that's right.
Okay, good. I'm right.
I went first last time.
Good. Terry,
What was the question, sir?
what is the economic development vision for Queens County? What is your economic development vision for Queens County?
Start the clock, John. My economic vision includes the Mersey wind generation. It's proposed that there be 33 105 meter in height windmills generating generating 4.5 megawatts per unit for a total of 448 megawatts. Their tax base is projected to be $700,000 a year when they're full production. And over a 20-year period, that's a lot of money. I think $17 million for the region of Queens, $700 a year, quite a nice tax base. There's also a windmill being built out near Greenfield, and I think it consists of 10, and it has a Mi'kmaq name. I'll try to say it, Apatapjuik, and that means tamarack in First Nation Mi'kmaq speech. Another part of my economic development plan would be, as I started to mention earlier, with respect to the Queens Care Society and their vision for cooperative housing, neighborhood cooperative housing developments, to get things in place for them. And the rent would be based on the provincial medium, which they think is probably $1,200 a month, and it would be adjusted for people with lower income levels. I'm trying to think. Coastal protection. We have to invest money in our coasts. We need zoning change, zoning bylaw changes. We need breakwater repairs like they used to do when I first arrived. All the breakwaters were repaired. They haven't been repaired since 1985, I don't think. Money has to be spent there. I guess I'll have to stop there. My brain is going flat on me.
Okay. Mr. Christian?
We need jobs that pay living wages, full stop. We need it. That's how we're going to build a middle class. That's the mill, says Terry. I guess that's your economic development strategy. We need a good strategy. And then we need to invest in the team within the region to execute on that strategy. I think it's critically important. These things aren't easy. They need to come in lockstep. We need to, the housing supply needs to come along. Investment in the important community recreational facilities need to come along. We need to attract employers and investors into the community. It's challenging. It's complex. We need to take a systems lens with it. That doesn't mean it's impossible, and it doesn't mean that we shouldn't get to work on it. So my approach, and I'm one of 8, but my approach would be to come up with a common vision, come up with an understanding of where we want to get to as an entire region of Queens. There's immense potential all throughout Queens County. So whatever strategy we come up with for the region of Queens has to be for all of Queens County. And it's about, like, I don't believe that we should try to swim upstream. I believe that we should look where the currents are, where the emerging opportunities are. Let's work alongside ACOA. Let's work alongside the provincial government and identify where those emerging industries are. Identify where the opportunities are for investment. And then look to our communities. Look to the resources we have available. Look to our labor force who's underemployed, working jobs that don't pay a living wage, and align the opportunities, align our community, pave the way so that when the next employer comes asking Nova Scotia, where's the best place to invest in, they think immediately of Queens County. One specific thing that I think we need to do is we need to expand our tourism sector, but specifically as it relates to experiential tourism, tour-based tourism, whereby people can have authentic, localized experiences. Because a lot of the traditional tourism industry creates lower-paying entry-level jobs, waiting tables, turning over bed sheets. But experiential tourism is a way that we can celebrate our heritage, honor our history, and create actually vibrant economies all throughout Queens County, right? Caledonia needs to be the gateway to Kijimkujik, the inland park. Port Jolly needs to be the gateway to Thomas Radall Park and to the Keji Seaside. We have these incredible assets that are underutilized. Folks don't know where and how to spend money when they come to Queens County. We need to show them. We need it to be obvious. Yeah? So I think there's incredible opportunity. There's incredible opportunities all throughout Queens County. We need a plan. We need to work that plan. And I think it's all very, very exciting. And then the one other industry, I think it's, we talk about the aging and elderly folks among us. Geriatric care and independent living and assisted living are big industries. And we just need to attract the workforce and invest in the infrastructure to make sure that elderly folks are cared for, but those will also create really good paying jobs. Thank you.
Okay, we're now into free time. Do you want anything to add, or are you ceding the time?
I'm going to cede my time.
Okay. So we'll move on to the next question. Like many places in Nova Scotia, Queens County is experiencing population growth and along with it, a shortage of available affordable housing. What role does the municipality have in addressing the needs of lower and middle income families for safe and affordable housing? And Scott, this is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, we need a comprehensive housing strategy. We need to build new houses, but we also need to use better the stock of housing that we have. So there's a couple creative solutions that we can look to. I heard this come up consistently through the town halls and knocking on doors. We got lots of ideas with regards to housing. So with regards to using the existing dwellings that we have better, one way that the municipality, one role that the municipality could have is making use of the tax levers. So there's a $40,000 forgivable loan that you can access for multi-generational housing renovations to your home. So if you want to have an in-law suite or something like that added on. But I've spoken to folks and they say, Scott, I have an in-law, would love to have them living here, would love to take advantage of that program, but what would that do to my capped assessment? And then what would that do to my tax bill? So here's a creative solution that we as the municipality could act, is that if you want to take advantage of that program and you need to prove that over the next 5 years, it's forgiven 20% per year over the next 5 years, that loan, if you meet the criteria of that program, we hold your taxes. Yeah, the PVSC is going to adjust the capped rate, but we can adjust the mill rate so that you don't experience a rise in your taxes. So that's one idea, that's one solution that we could explore. Also, I've been in conversations with a CIC, which is and I knew I would forget the acronym, what it means. It's like a social purpose enterprise, a community interest company. They're called Everbloom, based out of Dartmouth. Right now, it's like 10%. I think the CMHC has said that 10% of all new housing needs to be non-market housing, basically affordable housing. And this Everbloom company, as a CIC, is driven to reinvesting 60% of all monies earned back into their social objective, which is housing for all. And so they are committed to development projects where 35% of the entire mixed development project would be for non-market housing, for affordable housing. And you see that this 10% legislative mandate or requirement that's rolled out by the province of Nova Scotia, the nonprofit community is seeking to try to meet the need. The challenge is that the nonprofit community doesn't have the expertise nor the financial might to invest in the amount, the volume of new buildings that we need. Whereas a community interest company can access private equity, but also facilitate a social objective. So I think we need to explore creative, innovative solutions to address a problem that we've inherited. It's not our problem. The feds stopped spending money on social housing in the 1990s, so we need an all-hands-on-deck approach, but we can't sit back and say this isn't the municipality's problem. Look around, look at the community. Nobody can afford rent. People can't afford a down payment on a house. It's everybody's problem. We need to work together to address it.
Mr. Doucette.
It's a nice thing to make the suggestion that lowering the tax rate is going to be a useful direction to move. I beg to differ with that totally. Because when you lower a tax rate, you're lowering taxes, and something has to compensate for that, and I'm not sure what that would be. Knocking on doors, visiting homes, has a jolting effect on me sometimes. I just can't believe that people are living in conditions where they live. We need a whole lot of lower income places for those citizens to be able to live. And we can't throw them in places without providing the social supports that they need to make good for themselves. They need help with money management skills. Some of them need help for drug addictions. Many need help for mental health issues. And the one thing that is growing significantly in our county are people with mental health issues. I really like the previous council's decision to increase rebates for taxes. If you make less than $25,000 or less, you can have a $400 rebate. If you make between under $30,000, it drops to $350. And if you're making $35,000, it drops to $300. But there's an incentive there for people to be able to keep their homes. Seniors are worried about losing their homes. They don't know how to save the money for the taxes, to be able to eat healthy foods, to pay insurance, to provide for heat. We need more units in existence so that seniors, when they decide to leave their homes, can go and be at peace. 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, three bedroom apartments. It doesn't sound like an easy solution because there isn't any. It's a problem. We need economic growth. We need population growth. And until that happens, things aren't going to change much. Thank you.
We'll move on to free time. If there's any additional comments.
I would just clarify that the solution that I had said with regard to the multi-generational, the holding the taxes, the level of taxes being paid by a household who takes advantage of a multi-generational grant program through the feds wouldn't be lowering their taxes. It would just be holding the taxes where they are. Stable.
Okay, we are now at 7 o'clock, so we're going to move on to the portion of this debate that includes questions from the audience. I've received a number of very good questions. I'm going to try to get to as many of them as we can. But I want to start with a question that actually kind of moves outside of the town of Liverpool. This is with respect to private roads and lot owners associations. So the question reads, is from Mr. Al Moore. Since 2017, several road associations have asked Queens County for assistance in collecting road fees. Several different councils have shelved the idea of road fee collection with the lot owners' taxes. In 2022, councils seem to be in full favor of the collection method, but has not implemented the bylaw yet. Queens is one of the last counties in the province that does not have this bylaw in place. In August, there was a survey in Greenfield that was supported by at least 120 people, and the question is, what are the results? Do we now know what the results of the survey is? I'm not sure that you would know that, but will a bylaw be implemented for 2025 tax collection if you're elected?
Sure, would be your first go, wouldn't it? Yeah, your first go.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I can speak on behalf of the lot owners that are on Storts Lake. They want nothing to do with the region of Queens collecting taxes for their roads. And I was at the meeting where this was all discussed. And the problem exists significantly when people are not paying their lot fees. The region of Queens, I think, has to become very careful as to what it's collecting for. Lot fees are expected to be paid because each association, lot owners association, would have covenants with respect to where you build, what you build, how you build, how many trees you cut, and you will be paying your dues. I have been the person who writes letters reminding people in our subdivision that your fees are overdue. It's a polite, friendly reminder the first time. Second is a bit of a more direct. You need to pay real quick. And the third will be followed by a lawyer's letter. So my lot owners, I don't want to say they're trained, but they're people who will pay their bills. And sometimes people forget. COVID was a rough time. I think that my personal feeling is that Region of Queens staff have a significant amount of work to do and more to follow, and they don't need this extra thing. But there are people, particularly out in the Greenfield area, the LaBelles and the Bonhooks, they want this, and they may need it. I can't speak for them.
So I live on a private road, and we all get along, and we all sort of contribute our money.
I do the plowing.
That's why all the gravel's off to the side, eh?
The rate just went up.
I don't think it should be forced on people who live on private roads, and I'm not sure if that is the direction that the region would take it. I think it needs to be on a case-by-case basis in terms of like lot owner association or private road association, like one to the next. Like you say, the folks that you work with aren't keen on it. I certainly wouldn't be keen on it. I've heard horror stories where people are in arrears and they don't really have much of an enforcement mechanism to hold people to account who won't pay their fair share, and I can appreciate the sort of bureaucratic nightmare that creates. I hear people talk about, I would be part of the Lot Owners Association, but all really you are is a henchman who has to go chasing after people for past dues, and it's not, it's not enticing. Yeah, there you go. So I think that it should be a democratic process whereby the members of each Lot Owner Association, if the region is willing to facilitate that, certainly my one thing that I'll say on it is it definitely should not be forced on all folks who live on private roads.
Okay. Anything further, Dad?
Maybe just because we're talking about LaBelle and Pond Hook, it's not good enough. The waste management is not good enough up there. The region needs to do something in terms of upgrading the boxes or the facilities there, and then also being more frequent runs to the dump, because it's awful. There's a lot of taxpayers up there. They don't access many services. They should have good waste management.
Okay, free time if you want to add something else to it.
Further to what Scott has just said, one of the worst I've seen is on the back road. It's Hicks Road that leads to the back end of our White Point Lodge. And the garbage in those, I think there are 3 gray boxes. I'm not sure who's dumping things there, but there's no way that there could be that much garbage in a gray box. And it's oftentimes after a dark night all over the road. And I suspect that there's a significant black bear problem in places like that. And I can tell you, because I'm in the subdivision quite a bit, that there are more black bears on the loose than there are deer roaming around the subdivision that I look after. And I think the forest fire down in Barrington has had a lot to do with that. I think the animals were driven this way. So yeah, it needs to be monitored. Scott is right. Garbage is not as nasty stuff. So is the smell. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next question. This was touched on briefly before. It's from Karen Paris. And the question is, where do you believe is the best location for the Liverpool Library? And if it is moving away from the temporary location, what do you envision the timeline will be?
So again, I think gratitude. I want to extend gratitude. I was just over the Queen's Daycare Association. We handed over the reins to the YMCA to run the daycare, but we're still working with Bellevue Vino to try to close out those accounts like 8 months later. So I had the pleasure to go over to Bellevue Vino, which is located immediately adjacent to where the work is underway. And I have gratitude for the staff who are working and trying to design a location there that's going to meet the needs of our community. But again, I disagree. I do not think that that's an appropriate space for a public library. It's not walkable. It's not if you look, we need an inspiring library space as well. It needs to be centrally located. We have the Nova Scotia library system is an incredible resource, and the only role that the municipality plays, or the only part that they have to play, is providing an envelope, providing a bit of square footage so that programming can, spread its wings and fly. So we ought to do a good job of locating a library in a place that is, close to the schools, centrally located with other services and supports. And I'm not like a build it guy. I don't know much about buildings, etc. But I think proximity to the Astor Theater as the town sort of arts and culture hub would make sense. I don't know if the old Stedman's across the street that's sitting vacant would be an appropriate space. Wherever it is, it needs to be accessible, inclusive to all, and inspiring for the users. Again, it's one of those things. We need to do the things, we need to invest in the future in ways that benefit us now and then attract folks for the future, position us well for the future. Having an inspiring library space would be great for us now and would be a feather in our cap in terms of attracting those investors, employers that we want to see here. So it's very similar to my thinking around an indoor pool. I just think that those vital pieces of community infrastructure are money well spent, from my perspective. And I think that given that print resources are largely leaving the libraries within the schools, and those are being turned into learning commons, if there's no libraries in schools, then we ought to have a really great, accessible, inclusive, inspiring library publicly here in town. The thing I will say too that's encouraging is that the upgrades and the $1 million that have been spent to date on what I would like to think of as the temporary location, and again, 1 of 8 votes, but I would be a strong advocate to turn that ensure that is a temporary location, and that we relocate it to a more suitable permanent location. I'm sorry.
Okay,
thanks.
Mr. Doucette.
Well, my 37-year career was that of an educator, and I'm a strong believer in libraries. I was at council meetings in June, July, August, and September, and I witnessed the discussion on the proposed location for the library. The agenda was there, and I had a chance to see the plans. I listened to the debate, and there was a lot of questions and answers being given, and ultimately the call center building was determined to be the location. For the life of me, if I could run down and grab my notes, I could find out how much the renovations were projected to cost, but it's left me. Do I think that's the best location for a library? I'm like Scott, I certainly don't. I'd like to see it done in a historic building. I'm not sure of the capacity of the Astor Theater and at the Old Town Hall, but that would be a quality place as far as I'm concerned, with a historical purpose. Not hysterical, historical. And it has to be inviting, and a library isn't confined to books. There would be rooms for stimulation, sensory rooms and things like that, so that it could be a family place. I understand the region of Queens thinking. They have a huge building that's not being used to capacity, and they're trying to save money. But it's an investment, just like a pool, or just like something new. And it's an opportunity to do it right, and when you do it right, you're thanked for it. So I'm like Scott, I'm in favor of a quality location.
Open time?
I want to observe how we ended up here. I'm glad there's not going to be a disruption in services. I'm glad that we're going to have a location for the library. But the reality is that the mayor and council of the region were informed that the current location was no longer going to be available to them, like years ago. And it was through a process that was, and I watched it play out. I haven't had time to get to the council meetings over the last 3 months, but I've been watching it pretty closely for the last 7 years. And I watched it play out whereby the mayor and council they had information misrepresented by the administration, who tried to manipulate the decision-making process as to where the location of the library would be. And that is an egregious occurrence and something that has happened all too often. And I just want to highlight that and really importantly say that we need to ensure that there is good governance for the future of Queens and that mayor and council make the decisions and that the administration execute on the will of the mayor and council, the duly elected officials. That's not what happened, and that's why we've ended up in this mess where we have a suboptimal location for our public library.
Nothing further? Okay, this next question, I think flows very much from some of the responses that have already been given from Mr. Andrew McVicker. One of the responsibilities of the mayor is to lead a team of councillors. Can you please describe your leadership style and what would you do specifically to lead a high-functioning council? Mr. Doucette, I believe it's your opportunity to go first.
My management style, I want to say with the name that they used to call me the warden, that I was in charge. My management style is, I consider myself to be a moderate decision maker, like a moderate, when I'm thinking of things, I try to look at both sides. With my experience, and I'm thinking of an email that I got from a lady who must not like me, and she was saying that, are your school principalship and leadership skills transferable? And I would say, oh yes, they are. I have taken courses in mediation. I've taken courses in being a change agent. I have a parliamentary certification for running meetings. I've done financial planning. I've balanced with the books, so to speak, for both my personal business and for school board. When it comes down to it, I see myself being able to motivate people. I believe in professionalism, and I'm going to insist on it. If I'm the mayor, I'm going to be working to build the team, as I said earlier. I want the team to be engaged. I want to be active listeners, as we all should be when we're in a managerial position like that. I want the board, I want the council to come to the meeting with enthusiasm. I want them to leave. They may not agree with the decision, but I want them to leave feeling good about themselves, that they had a voice and it was heard. Ultimately, decisions have to be made, and once the decision is made, we go forward. I would be negligent if I didn't also say that I've been to the municipal office many times, and as a person who works with people all my life, and still do, I can sense when morale is not as good as it should be. So I'm awfully concerned about how people are feeling about their jobs. I know there are vacancies out at the region of Queens, anywhere between 5, maybe 7, that aren't being filled, and I wonder why. There are opportunities, there are good jobs. Financial clerk, no applicants. It took a while for the region of Queens to secure a replacement for the CAO who left and went to the Valley. Why is that?
That's time, but we're entering open time, so please feel free to engage.
No, it's my go. It's not open time, right? No, it's my go.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're quite right.
Yeah, it's not easy. Leave it to McVicker, right, to ask the tough question. It's not easy, and from what I've seen in being a close observer of the mayor and council over the last 2 terms, is that a lot of it is because we're not running Liverpool. We're trying to work as a municipality representing all of Queens County. And having that regional amalgamated county, it's tricky. It's tricky to all be on the same page. Oftentimes what feels right for Liverpool, it doesn't feel right for South Brookfield or Port Jolly. And so that's challenging and it's tricky. And I understand the posture when a councillor represents the needs and interests and desires and of the folks that they represent most directly. I mean, that's democracy. But the challenge is when that leads to a fractured team or no team at all. And for my money, what we really need is we need to agree as a team, as a mayor and council, the next mayor and council, on a common vision for what's right for all of Queens County, and a set of principles that we can lean on to guide our decision making, where we can say, wait a second, does this align to the vision that we've set out? Right? Where do we want Queens to be 50 years from now, and what are the reasonable steps that we can make in the next year or the next 3 years to move toward that vision? So then when an opportunity emerges, right, like $3 million falls out of the skies for a pool, or a threat emerges, like the water was shut off, we don't know what to do about that, strike of lightning, right? That we have some basis of how to understand, how to respond. And then we don't every single time have to come back to the drawing board and say, well, what do you think? What do you think about that, each of the 8 of us? We have a true north, and we have a set of principles that we align to. And of course, there's still going to be disagreement. Even if we have a common vision, there will be abrasive moments. There'll be times where we disagree. And then that's when I think you need to be a good, effective, collaborative leader. And my approach is to be candid, but with kindness. I've seen leaders in my work weaponize candor. And they say, I'm just calling it like I see it. I'm saying it how it is. And it's like, respectfully, you're being a jerk, is what you're being, and you're bullying people. There's a way, we don't want to sweep it under the rug. We want to deal with it head on. We need to be accountable. We need to be transparent as the duly elected members of the council. But in communicating things openly and honestly, we can do so respectfully, professionally, and we can hold each other to account without becoming enemies of one another. So that would be my approach to collaborative leadership. Thanks, Andrew. Great question.
And now we would be into open time in which you can add further to your comments if you like.
I would just like to say that the new mayor and council have one person that they can evaluate and somehow manage a little bit, and that is the CAO. The council and mayor will depend upon people to present the facts and the figures, hopefully in an accurate format. If you don't have the right information, it's impossible to make the best decision. So we have to work together, and of course, we'll do our best to get the right information when the new council is formed, whether it's Scott with them or it's Terry that's with them. We don't evaluate employees. We depend on the CAO for what happens there. So.
Thank you. I think we have time for one last question. And this one is from Susan McGibbon. What is your economic development plan to revitalize downtown Liverpool? And Scott, I believe you're up first this time.
Small towns need small business. It's imperative. And the margins for small business, particularly bricks and mortar small business, have never been trickier. They're razor thin. And so we need to look for creative solutions to support those small businesses because otherwise we just won't have them. Now the reality is that I think product-based retail small businesses are really challenging because the amortization of the world, the Walmartification of the world, the reality is that a lot of monies on consumer goods are spent online and in big box stores. So it makes it really challenging. Not impossible, but really challenging. But the inverse, or the opposite side of the coin is I've seen services do really well here. What's the woman's name? Zoe. I think that's her name. Set up shop, a nail salon right beside Rick's barber shop. And Chloe. Sounds like Zoe. Sounds pretty close. Come on, I'm pretty close on that one. So there's service-based industries, but we need to do what we can. And what we can do, I think, again, is being creative with the levers that we have control of, similar to my idea around holding the tax rate as it relates to folks who take advantage of that $40,000 multi-generational renovation project. Small businesses can ill afford to have their taxes go through the roof when they leverage all their available capital and access available credit to make improvements to a physical location. So I think we ought to, you look at how much square footage of unoccupied, unused commercial space we have on Main Street and throughout other parts of the region. We need to incentivize it. So I think that it would make sense. A creative solution would be when a small business invests in a piece of physical infrastructure like that, again, let's hold the tax base and let them recuperate their losses for a couple of years, so that they don't have a massive capped assessment and then big tax bill when they're trying to make back their money. The other thing is that we need to work effectively. We need to come up with that economic development strategy and identify where the various sizes of organizations or businesses can coexist. So bringing in large large industry, those types of things, those will bring more people who have more money to spend in medium and small sized businesses. So it's all interlinked. We have to have good, collaborative, effective working relationships within the municipality with the North Queens Board of Trade and the South Queens Chamber of Commerce, with Soshore Tourism. We need to establish a scaffolding of stakeholders that we can engage with so that we're aware of where the opportunities are, where the pain points are, so that we can best support small business. It's crucial. Thank you.
Mr. Doucette.
I arrived in town, as I said earlier, in 1978. Over the years, until 2012 when Bowater closed, I could drive to town and I could buy a car at Cole Ford. I could drive across the road, could buy one at Saunders Motors. I could drive up where Carroll's is, that was opened. I could also drive out towards White Point and stop at King Cochran's and Lester Turner's garage to buy a car. Now I can't even go to town and go to the Bank of Nova Scotia. Unbelievable. The Bank of Montreal was notoriously, that's probably not a good choice of words, it was the bank for Bowater and Mersey. The Royal Bank, that was a pretty steady bank, right? If I wanted to buy a new pair of pants, dress pants, I could go to Max Harding's. Raise your hand if you remember Max Harding's store. There we go. If they didn't have it there, I could go down, I think it's Market Street, to Harris's, right? It's different times. When the mill closed, you go to town now, you see the impact of it. The money is just not in everybody's hands. Our lower, our middle class, the provincial assessment for municipalities shows it. We're below average with our wages, our unemployment, and our education. We have to fix that. We have to put money in our people's pockets, or this community, this county, is going to be, and I see it, and I've seen it for probably 30 years. We used to have maternity. It's gone to the regional hospital in Bridgewater, Lunenburg County. We used to have endoscopy. It's gone to Bridgewater. We used to do surgeries. There was always a surgeon in our town. There was always an anesthetist here. They're gone. It's really sad to see. Our education system is in serious trouble too. Here, I went to a public meeting at Queen's Middle School to fight for more teachers, and I looked in the room, and everybody there was like senior level administrators from Bridgewater. I go to council meetings, and I hear them talking about our building inspectors only have level 1s, and there's 2 of them. We need to bring level 2s in from Lunenburg County. They can do it. Recently, it was home support. The new leadership that's coming in is from Lunenburg. Hey, if that's a temporary solution, I'm okay with that. But I want Queens County to stay Queens County. I don't want to see any more movement.
That's
Thank
time,
you.
but we're into open time. Is there anything additional you'd like to add? And that just about uses up the entire of our time this evening. I want to thank the candidates for...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And for all of you, you've now had your opportunity to hear the candidates. Shortly, the decision will be in your hands, so please remember to vote. And with that, I will turn it over to John Simmons to say just a final thank you.
Thank you, Darrell Dexter.
Thank you, Darrell.
You've had a chance to hear both candidates, both very eloquent, very passionate gentlemen, who I'm sure will devote their all to whatever capacity they find themselves in moving forward. We've got a lot to think about. There's a lot of material that's been presented here. Both gentlemen have websites. I encourage you to look at those websites. They paraphrase their platforms and their ideas there. And I'm sure each of them will be more than available to you individually to answer questions as we move forward. One last thing, before I bid you goodbye, we have an art show that started this week upstairs, and the opening reception is going on right now as we speak. We might even give you a free cookie before you go. Thank you very much for coming.
Nice talking with you.